This video is brought to you by Craven's Comic Books and Collectibles. Check out their weekly live show, auction, and sale at facebook.com/cravenscomics every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can check out their inventory at cravenscomics.com. Craven's Comics, for the comics you crave. Please welcome to the program Paul Sun-Hyung Lee.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, Paul.
How's it going, Paul?
Not too bad. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, of course, Kim's Convenience, season 5 just started airing last week. 2 episodes have aired so far in this new season. And I got to say, the one thing I really enjoy and appreciate about Kim's Convenience is that it's a sitcom where things don't automatically get wrapped up nice and simple each season. Like in other shows, a situation like a father and son having a falling out, like that's a 1 season arc for them. Right. Whereas this is a much more, you guys have done a much more realistic look within a sitcom of how, you know, it takes time to heal and repair that relationship. And you get to see not only the effects between Appa and Jung, and that, especially last season with the soccer episode, like the subtlety there was amazing. But then you get to also see it with Appa's relationship with Janet and how he, you know, he's almost overprotective with that relationship because that's the, you know, the kid that he has the connection with. So when it comes to like playing those performances, like you must really appreciate to have such like for a show that's like very simplistic in its premise to have such meaty emotional hooks to dig into for a comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what sets Kim's apart from your traditional sitcom where you have the wacky dad and the mom and you know, these situations where the stakes aren't as high. And one of the lovely things about Kim's Convenience is we try to keep it as authentic and as grounded as possible while maintaining the comedy. And a lot of the comedy arises from the truth of the situation, and it's recognizable and relatable in that sense. And as an actor, it's a dream part to play. I mean, a character that has that range of emotions, who isn't perfect by any means, who learns from his mistakes and still makes plenty of them and says outrageous things and does outrageous things. It's an absolute treat. And, you know, at the start of my career, I didn't really have plum roles like that. You know, it's you're playing lawyer number 3 or emergency doctor number 2 or like court translator or gang member number 5 or whatever. And so to finally be able to play like a character who's just well-rounded like that is amazing.
I know we've seen you for years pop up on shows here and there. In fact, when Kim's Convenience first came out, I just kept thinking in my head, it's killing time, pull the trigger from the the first episode of Alphas. Wow. And so, yeah, it's been very cool to see you know, go from being like, yeah, a day player in all these different shows to now getting to be like the star of a show that is now getting, you know, recognition around the world. It's fantastic. Yeah. It must be great to have put in the grind and now seeing that pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, it's something that I never thought I would get at the beginning of my career. It became very obvious that I'm not going to get any lead roles in a lot of these things. And I'll be lucky if I just sort of grind it out. And that's what it was. And it is being that day player and playing those expositional parts and but working, right? And you look at all these fantastic character actors who become leading men, like Paul Giamatti's a great example of one guy who early on in his career played a lot of smaller roles, but then suddenly was given the opportunity to sort of shine. And he showed that what he could do with his craft. And I feel very fortunate to have been in that same situation where you grind it out because you love the work and you want to grow, and you shift your set of expectations. And then a role comes your way and then you're just able to crank it out of the ballpark. And it's been it's been a surreal but great ride over the last few years.
I know, I can imagine. And I'm just curious, Paul, if you could speak to the fact, like the realities of being on the show when you first got on the show, right? And you're doing the show, and and, you know, and with TV, unlike a play or, you know, or anything, or a comedy, like in a club, you don't get that instant gratification and understanding that the audience is loving what you're doing, right? It's always afterwards. And I'm just wondering, like, when you think about the journey thus far on Kim's, like from season 1 all the way up to, you know, where you guys are now in 5, that like what was it like learning how much the show was, you know, being well received and being loved, and then internationally, like it seems to have become its own juggernaut. Like it's one thing for it to be a Canadian show and to be, you know, accepted and revered that way, but to now get that bigger audience, that I gotta think that's got to be you know, a little overwhelming at times for you guys.
Yeah, you know, and that's been Kim's from the get-go, you know. It started off as a stage play that nobody wanted to commission or even put up on their stages, right? And so that's why, you know, it's entered it into the Fringe Festival in Toronto, because he needed to see it at least once on stage. And once we hit, it just sort of caught fire. And like we used to joke, it's like, wouldn't it be funny if the show got picked up and was a main stage show for one of the big theater companies? And then that happened. And it wouldn't be funny if we did so well, we got to do a national tour, and then that happened. It wouldn't be funny if it got made into a television series and we started winning awards and became popular, and then that happened. And so all these things, I mean, that's Kim's Convenience in a nutshell, is a little show that could, but going along for the ride too, that's exactly it. When we made the jump from the stage to the screen, honestly, we were a little bit not worried. I think maybe, yeah, just worried that maybe it wasn't going to translate, how our audience is going to react to it. And you're right, because when you're on stage, you know right away whether you're connecting with an audience or not.
Right.
And here, just before season 1, we got greenlit for 2 seasons before we'd even aired, which is a tremendous accomplishment. And we were, you know, holding our breath to see how the community was going to react to the show. And they were the haters. I mean, it's incredible what happens before anything even airs. You get a number of people who hate a show and have made up their mind right away. I'm going to hate this show. It's racist because there are Asian people in it. And he's talking with accents, so he has to be racist. And I'm going to be offended. And like the amount of vitriol online before we even aired was hilarious. But not without a little bit of fear too, right? Because you're like, oh my God, we haven't even started yet. And we already got the hate. Like, just chill. Like, watch the show. Then you can hate us, right? But come back with concrete reasons why you hate it. But it hit. And the biggest compliment, and it was hilarious, online, I'm looking at Twitter, when Twitter was a lot more civilized way back then. And it was, you know, you see the metrics come back. And one of the biggest compliments was, because people had a hate on, like they were ready to feast and hate watch it. And they were licking their chops. And the feedback was, hey, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Actually pretty good. Like that was the most dumbfounded sort of like, oh, it's not shitty. It's actually really good. And then it just started rolling from there. And I know the Korean community in Toronto, they were a little bit worried because, right. I mean, let's be frank, the portrayal of an Asian family on television up until then hadn't been the best, right? Or even Asian characters. And so they were really worried it was going to be a caricatured sort of mock fest. And they're worried because they had spent so much time building up community value and trying to show that we, you know, the Korean community is an important part of our society, and we're contributing and stuff. And so that sort of social capital, they were worried about it all being swept away with one terrible TV show. And so I know there was a lot of reluctance for the community to watch, but then they started watching it and they realized, oh my God, this is a loving portrayal of members of our community, not even hyper idealized, because Mr. and Mrs. Kim, they have their faults. The kids aren't perfect, right? There's an estranged son. They have all this baggage, but it's presented in such a respectful, loving way, and audiences connected with that family dynamic that they loved. And then for it to go on and to get it, really what happened was we were big in Canada and nobody else knew about us until we dropped on Netflix. And in Netflix US, even that first year that the first 2 seasons were dropped, like things went nuts. And then with the pandemic this past year, that's when everything just sort of caught on fire because everyone was at home and they needed content. They also needed something to take them away from the horror show that was happening outside. And Kim's, through word of mouth, they were sort of like, hey, do you want a show that makes you just feel good about yourself? And it's about family, and it's gentle, and it's kind, and it's funny, and it's not, you know, and it's got heart. Watch this show. And people were just, I get messages to this day still saying, we discovered the show because of the pandemic. And I want to say thank you for getting us through these dark times. And that's really surreal. Like that just to be able to do something that you love. and have it affect people that way it's great.
Oh, totally. We got some emails in. The first email is actually from my co-host of Back Issue Bloodbath, comic book podcast I do, Petula Neal. She got very excited when she heard you were coming on, and she was like, I'm going to write in with some questions. So she's got 2 questions for you. First one is, how long do you think Mort from End of Days Inc. would last on The Walking Dead?
First of all, thank you so much for watching that. That was a labor of love. I love that Mort. Oh my God, I haven't thought of him in years. 2013 is when I shot that. Thank you. He wouldn't last more than, but I don't know. I think he's dumb enough that he might, and childish enough that he might just sort of slip through the cracks. He'd be slow. I mean, thank God he doesn't have to feed or anything, right? He just rots. So I don't think he'd be in any danger from any of the zombies. I think the humans would take pity on him, though. I think it's one of those things. So I think he'd last a good couple of seasons at least, and then he'd probably fall off a cliff, or like down some elevator shaft, or something ridiculous that only Mort could do.
Well, there you go. And then the other question she has is, if there were a Law and Order type comic book about your Mandalorian character, what low-level criminal would you want to apprehend first?
Oh wow. I'd want to lean on the smugglers. Just so I could get leverage on them, because they know that these are the guys that know all the hyperspace lanes, right? And they know. So if you can put the squeeze on them and grab them by the short and curlies and keep them in your pocket, they're an invaluable resource. So I'd go after one of those mid-level smugglers who can get me the intel on the big guys, and I wouldn't put them away per se, but I'd use them to just sort of, because they're trying times, and you got to play in the gray areas.
Right.
In the outer rim. So I think that's definitely what he would do.
So it'd be all your informants and whatnot. That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, she finished off by saying, hi, Mr. Green and Andrew, virtual hugs to you as well, Petula.
Absolutely.
And then we've got an email from Blaine C, who says, hello, geeks. I just wanted to say that Paul is such a talented actor. Very, very believable. My family and I just love Kim's. It's brilliant. Thanks, geeks, for having Paul on your show, Blaine. Well, thank you, Blaine, for listening. And that's the thing. Yeah. People love Appa. Like that's when I tell people, it's like, oh, we're going to have Paul on the show. Everyone's like, oh my God, Appa. I love Appa. So being such a loved character, how does it feel to not only have a character that's beloved, but that has his own catchphrase?
Yeah. That's a great question. It's something I keep saying this. It's something I never, ever expected would ever happen to me. I think it's like a Simpsons episode, right? Like with Homer, when he suddenly becomes, Homer Simpson on his own sort of spin-off cop show. And he had his own saying, it's surreal. It's extremely gratifying. As an actor, it's very validating, but it also comes with its own set of responsibilities that I take quite seriously. And the responsibility to the fans as well, and to the people who support you, because it's like, without that kind of support, I wouldn't be here. And so it's lovely. And the okay, see you has become an anthem for all the upper, just everybody in particular. It's used in so many different ways, from just a simple goodbye to when you're shining somebody off, you want to be snarky. Okay, see you. It's so many different things. It's like, forget about it. It's like one of those type phrases. And it's really, really neat to be part of that, on the ground floor of that.
Yeah, I gotta say, like when I watched the show and then seeing the family as a whole dynamic, like what Andrew was mentioning earlier, is just like, when I look at it, I see like my own family, even though like I'm not Asian, obviously, but I see it's the same family dynamics in almost every family. Like everybody's got, somebody who's like Appa, and like Uma, like it's you have these characters and the son and the daughter, like you have them all there, and to see it, one of the things I love about about the show is that you realize that none of that really matters. None of the other stuff matters, right? It's just like we all live the same experiences and have all the crazy kooky, aunts and uncles and stuff like that in our lives.
Absolutely. And that's, I mentioned something like that when I won the CSA, my first ever award for acting. And the CSA is like the Canadian version of an Emmy. So I won that for Kim's. And the big thing, and it's exactly what I said, it's a normalization of a family.
Yeah.
And you don't have to come from that culture, but you recognize the relationships. And when that happens, like, we all win. And it's then like, oh, well, maybe they're not as different as we think, you know, in terms of building bridges for communities, or finding that empathy or relatability. It's an incredible thing to have happen. And I love hearing that. I love hearing families getting together to watch the show and enjoying it, from different age groups, from 6-year-olds to 90-year-olds. Like, it's family viewing. And there's so few shows out there that are like that anymore. It's really a golden age. And man, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. You know, and to have more people discover the show and see themselves and their families in it too, it means the world.
Very cool. Now, if Appa were to actually run like a convenience store, a goods and services store in a galaxy far, far away, how do you think he'd react? Like, would he be like, if Captain Carson Teva showed up and was, you know, asking him a few questions about what was happening around the neighborhood, how do you think Appa would handle Captain Carson Teva?
Well, I think he'd be a bit suspicious and a little afraid. So yeah, I not to do anything. Yeah, you know, the Jawa, he just drop up a droid over there, and yeah, he say just second hand, but yeah, no, I don't know why. What you looking? I think he'd be like, you know, like a lot of convenience store owners. He knows he's got a little side hustle going on. I mean, everything's not 100% legit. But it's like, if a cop rolls in and starts asking questions, it's like, yeah, anything you want, just ask to me. I can squeal, no problem. Stuff like that.
You've got me convinced. I think Appa would totally just like rock it in, you know, in Star Wars. That would be like, you got. That's what you got to do. You got to start talking to them. That way you can have the dual roles.
Oh. Yeah, that's the series we need.
Right. Appa and Teva,
yeah,
partners in crime.
I got this great piece of fan art from a guy in Illinois. It's beautiful, and it's a picture. He's done it. It's a picture of Carson Teva and Appa face to face on the city street in front of Kim's Convenience with an X-wing parked in front.
Wow,
nice.
And it's beautiful, and I have to find a place to hang it up, because it is just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And a great mashup of two of my great loves.
right.
I got to ask you about that, because obviously, like, you know, you're in the show, and I am a giant Star Wars fan. Obviously, like, looking at the video here, I can see your background, and we all, like, well, not everybody, but we know, for example, that you're in the 501st. Like, we know
we've seen you at conventions for years,
all the time,
all the different outfits. Yeah.
I've basically have almost every fan expo. I think it's like I have a photo of you in some costume at some point. But I'm just, you know, like, when I think about it, it's like, you know, when you got to be on that show, like, that must have been pretty amazing to be able to do that. Like, now, like, in your life, you've got your own hit TV show, and then you're getting to do something that you love as a fandom. Yeah. Like, it's all coming up, Paul.
Yeah. And and on top of that, the whole, like, train from that to that, you know, a friend you hadn't seen in years, you run into LA, and she happens to be directing on The Mandalorian, and then you become friends with Dave Filoni, and then Jon Favreau's like, hey, we should put your friend Dave in this. Like, that's just such an amazing, like, it's a Cinderella story. Right?
It is. I feel like I'm in the Matrix or something, though, right? It's just like, it's so surreal. And if you subscribe to the idea of fate or destiny, where things have to sort of happen and fall into place, and the payoff might not be right away, but it is like that butterfly effect through the ages of me working with Deb and being in her short student film, and then not seeing her for 25 years, and then, you know, being in Los Angeles for the. And to be honest, I didn't really want to go at first to LA. Like, I was just like, it's an award show. I was like, I don't know if I want to go. I'd never been to LA before. Like, it's time away from my family. We just finished a whole season of shooting. I was tired, but it was like, no, just go. When are you going to get a chance to go to LA? And then all this happens, and it's like, bing, 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 bing. And again, it's like, yeah, everything's coming up Millhouse for me. It's just like, what is it? Could like, I use this phrase, my cup runneth over. There's just so many things that have been coming from it. And I just, in a time that's been so shitty for so many people, For this to happen to me, I'm extremely grateful for it. And I keep coming back to that, is that the humility of receiving all these things. I keep with me, because I'm fully aware of how many horseshoes must be shoved up my ass right now for all this. And I've worked too. Like, I've worked hard too for this, but there's a certain amount of, I think, karma or fate, or, when you treat people right, and you keep your nose clean, and you try your best, and you always try to maintain that sense of humility and groundedness, good things can happen. And yeah, my head's still spinning about it.
Yeah, no, that's
Well,
fantastic.
when you're the nicest guy in the universe, you deserve such great
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
and I know local artist Jason Liu, he did a little custom thing for you. What was that? Was it like to see that, like to see that figure?
Well, first of all, I didn't know Jason was into making custom figs.
Right.
I had no idea. Like, I knew he was a fantastic artist, and that he had his own book, and then he was going off and winning awards with the other work that he was doing with the other books. But I had no idea he was such a nerd in that sense. And so
Right.
when he showed, I mean, it was so good that people actually thought the Black Sea Hasbro was mass producing these. And there was, like, in Blog TO or one of the other publications, they jumped the gun and said, local actor gets his own action figure. And I just felt like, oh no, what have we started? But yeah, I mean, and it's stunning. And Jason, he did it up, and it's in the back room, and he gave me, like, he created, like, the card stock for it, and the
wow.
bubble, and he put it in, and it's beautiful. And he dropped it off with some of his artwork as well. And I'm just so blown away by the talent of all the fans out there, and Jason especially, to do something and meticulously put together. He made two of them. He's keeping one, and he gave me the other one.
That's awesome.
And just the level of details is just stunning for it. And so that's really cool. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned, of course, you're very grateful to have all these opportunities and all these things happen for you in a time where, it's still very unsure. It's like we have a vaccine now, but it's going to be a long time before we get to go back out into the world on the regular again. And of course, during this time, you have you start up a YouTube channel, Bitteration Dude Inc.
Yeah.
And you do My Geeky Basement, which, of course, is a lot of unboxings and a lot of comparisons of different products and showing off of some of the stuff you've put together for your cosplays and things like that. What I really enjoy about the show and the channel is you and your son Miles are like the perfect comedy team.
Yeah,
he's this tiny little sidekick that works perfectly. He accentuates the jokes where you need him to. You guys got great chemistry.
Oh, thank you. No, he's fantastic. It was his idea to do this, first of all, because he's a hardcore. I have a 16-year-old Noah, who's awesome, and he's like so much disdain, though, right? It's just like when I did the first cheapo unboxing, it was like the Skywalker saga in 4K, and he was like, oh. And I said, hey, you should watch it. And he's like, yeah. It's like, I'm sorry, Dad, it's really cringy. I'm like, oh, you cut me deep, Shrek. You cut me deep. And so he's sort of like off doing his thing. But Miles is like, yeah, no, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, man, sure. You're engaging with me, sure. And so he loves all that stuff too. But it's gotten to the point now where Noah's now like, he's jealous. So he's like, I won't be in one of these videos. It's like, really? Won't you die of cringing? And so I got to fold him into it as well. But yeah, no, it's a fun thing to do. And we're branching off. We're also doing a horror podcast with I'm doing with my sons.
Oh.
And basically it's called Fresh Eyes, Old Scares. And I'm showing them all the movies that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Nice.
And we were watching them. So like we started with American Werewolf in London. So we're trying to go more off the off beaten track, right? And like the stuff that I shouldn't have been watching. I mean, we still do have Friday 13th part 1 and 2. You got to do those and stuff. But we, some of the off the wall ones, like The Car was another movie that really freaked me out when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Arachnophobia, which is, a little bit off the beaten path, but it's fun because it's hearing their perspective and it's sharing the experiences that I had sneaking down and watching these movies, but I'm doing it full out with them. I want to be that cool dad. And I do this. I pull the kids from school back in the before times. if there was a big movie dropping, I pull them both from school and go, we're going to a matinee. Skip school. Let's go. And I call the school and say, we're going to see the movies, and just go, because my dad never did that with me because he was always working, and I appreciate it. And he would have if he could have. And so these are the memories I want to build with them, is to share these nerdy, geeky experiences. And yeah, it's fantastic. And so that's Bitter Asian Dude Inc.
Yeah.
came from there. And it's because I have all this stuff that are in boxes, and part of me dies because I'm unboxing them. I'm an opener now. And so I lean heavy into that because I know a lot of people are like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm sorry.
Embrace the opening. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I will say, I really loved how you threw Miles under the bus for breaking your Back to the Future diecast car previously.
Old wounds run deep, man. He promised me. Said, don't do it. He's like, yes, I won't do it. He was like 5. So really my fault for believing in a 5-year-old. But it's just like, dude.
But see, that's a t-shirt. My fault for believing in a 5-year-old. That's a t-shirt right there. But one thing that I think would be really cool on Bitter Asian Dude Inc. is if you actually did like a tour of your geeky basement and show off all the props.
Yeah. The basement, it's so funny because this is really as chaotic as this look, it's curated. The rest of the basement is such a mess, and it's got even worse. When we started this all, I had to repurpose a lot of these rooms and clean them up. And in fact, I had to rent storage space to keep all like scripts, tax documents, all this work related stuff, had to put out, and then bring out all the geeky stuff. And so the back room now, where I have, it looks like a comic book, like a mini comic book store, which I love. But now it's like got so many boxes, and I'm using it as a recording studio as well, because when I do voice work, I need like the soundproofed room and stuff.
Right.
But it's become, I've been ordering like crazy because of the pandemic too, like all these collectibles. And so this is my dog. He's sitting on here. Yeah, so like it's all in huge, and they're really big. And my wife is looking at every box that comes in. She's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, it's for the channel, baby. Are you gonna open it? Yeah. Okay. Just know we're running out of space. Like, I know. It's for work. It's for work. It's legit, baby. I'm doing an unboxing. She's like, okay. But it's like, I know I'm just teetering right on that edge of get out of the house type thing. But yeah, I think for sure I should do that. It's and what I have to is like, I think pales in comparison to a lot of real geeks that are out there who have like stuff that they've been collecting for like even like longer than me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's been great talking with you, man. Before we go, because again, we'd love to have you on again sometime as well. Because again, I feel like we just scratched the surface of everything. Yeah. But before we go, I have one last question, because this is something that has been bothering me for years, and I want your opinion on it.
Okay.
The theme song to Train 48. Oh, na 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 train.
Yeah.
Doesn't it sound a little bit like na 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 train?
I never ever thought of it that way. I that actually makes the song cooler. I think, compared to the Muppets. I think that's I kind of like that. Yeah. Oh my God. Now that's all I can hear. That's all I can hear. Na 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 train. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, oh my God, that's so cool. We should definitely contact 9 Point Landing. That's the Nashville group that actually sang the song. Right. Had nothing to do with our show. They just heard the word train in it, and I think they bought the rights for it and use it for the show. You should Google it and look it up. It's a full ass but it's kind of like Who Let the Dogs Out. Everybody knows that Who Let the Dogs Out. Who. But there's a whole rest of the song that nobody would recognize if it were played, and that's Train 48 song by 9 Point Landing.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll definitely have to check it out. But I still say that part of the song, it has to be Mario Brothers inspired. But anyways,
I thought it was the Muppets.
No, it's the
Muppets. Oh,
the theme song from the Mario Brothers.
Mario Brothers, of course.
Oh man. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been great talking with you, man. look forward to the rest of this season and, of course, seasons in the future. And really hope that Captain Teva shows up in future Star Wars properties.
From your lips to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's ears.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Thanks a lot,
Absolutely.
man. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, see you.